Hello, Radiant One, and a very big and a very warm welcome to Mastery, the show and podcast for brilliant spiritual beings just like you, having a human experience ready to ignite the mastery inherent in you, as well as grow and expand from within and wanting to lead with love in work, business, and life. Designed to activate the mastery already within you, here we merge the worlds of seen and unseen, magic and miracles with the mundane and the practical, spirituality with strategy, the energetic with the physical, and business, work, and life with a whole lot of love and soul. I'm your host, spiritual business coach, business developer, and radical love rebel Maria Serafina. And it is my deep honor, my great pleasure, and joy to share this episode with you. I serve business owners and leaders wanting to learn and be supported as you navigate leading with heart and soul. I do that through the Spiritual Leadership Academy, the Spiritual MBA, and one-on-one spiritual business coaching full of intuition and energetic alignment. You can find out more about everything on my website, mariaserafina.com. Having been called to this show and podcast, it is my strong guess that mastery is already inherent within you, Radiant One. If you'd like to expand and amplify that mastery, download the Mastery Activation I've created for you. Originally released within my paid membership, The Elevation, I've now made it available to all. Go to mariaserafina.com/MA or click the link in the description to receive it. Remember, if you enjoy Mastery, make sure you subscribe, like, comment, share, or leave a review to amplify the energy and love being shared in these transmissions so they can reach more and more gorgeous radiant beings like you. Today I'm joined by Keri Nola, matriarch of the receptivity portal and holder of the healers. Her superpower lies in alchemizing scarcity consciousness and serving the givers as they remember how to receive. After over a decade of growing a fulfilling and profitable practice as a licensed psychotherapist, she retired in 2017, and her body of work evolved into the realms of mentor, guide, author, podcaster, and creatress of the Receptivity Portal for healing entrepreneurs. Today, she owns a global business, mentoring therapists, helpers, and healers as they remember how to transmute the energies of fear and doubt, activate the power of their purpose, and harmonize giving and receiving abundantly in alignment with divine will. Keri has been in my sphere for probably more than a decade, and I consider her to be one of the midwives of my podcast, The Magdalene Voices. As you'll hear, laughter, juiciness, and deep conversations about the good, the bad, and the magnificent is plentiful with us. Small disclaimer. In the beginning of this episode, there is mention of violence as Keri shares her ignition point. Here is our sacred conversation.
Well, hello there.
Hello.
You radiant, gorgeous soul, would you just start out by introducing? I can already feel like the juicy vibes are just flowing. Keri, would you start by introducing who you are and what you do to the world? Yeah, go ahead.
Absolutely. I'm already blushing. It's so good to be here with you. We have a beautiful history together.
Yes.
I just adore you and your body of work and feel so touched that you have invited me to have this conversation. And hello to those of you potentially hearing me for the first time. I am Keri Nola. Spent a long time as a psychotherapist, traditionally trained and working in the world of trauma healing, and beautiful, blessed career. Felt so put here on the planet to do that sacred work. Honestly, never saw a day when I would stop doing it until Spirit kind of came in and said, hey, we need you over here serving in another way. So in 2017, I retired from that expression of my service and began to help the healers and the helpers to be who they needed to be, clear what they needed to clear to answer their call of service. And that's looked like mentorship, coaching, groups, individual retreats, large events, podcasts, courses, now a membership community. I mean, I just listen to what is true and do my best to show up and serve. And it's been a beautiful, abundant ride. I feel so grateful.
And you were actually, you're still on my list of, I still call you one of my midwives because you were one of the, I was a client of yours back in, was that 2000? I think it was 2017. And you took me on I don't want to say wild ride because it wasn't intentional. It was just that I remember this very clearly. I still have the recording. It was at the end of a session and I said something and you were like, let's just check that out. And that took me into places where I was like, what is happening? And that then later that year ended up coming out as the Magdalene Voices, my first quote unquote podcast. And for that, you will always be one of the midwives of that because you were just a space holder in for me to bring that through. So yeah. And yeah, 2017, that's 7 years ago. Time flies when you're having fun, right?
Really does.
So, one of the reasons why I'd love to have you on is exactly because you have that background that you do. Like you were traditionally trained, as you say, with psychotherapy, but I'd like to start in a different place, really. I'd like to go back to when and how does your own personal spiritual journey or your journey with spirituality begin?
Yeah. It's such a big and beautiful question. And I feel like there's, different points, but the one that I really am taken back to is in 2008, I had two very significant deaths back to back. They were 3 weeks apart.
Okay.
One was my grandmother, a natural death, of an illness. And then the sudden and very tragic, unexpected murder of my intern.
Oh,
And I know it's shocking to hear that now. It's been very, integrated in my journey.
yeah,
But those back-to-back episodes of grieving, particularly the very traumatic aspect, you
yeah,
see homicide on Dateline or episodes of 2020 or 60 Minutes, but I didn't ever expect that that would hit close to home. So
no,
that really had me reeling for where do I go? How do I make sense of this? How does this get digested in my world? And I was going to traditional therapy, and one day I was sitting in my therapist's lobby and I saw this brochure for breath work for grieving healers. And I
okay,
thought, well, that's very specific and that's absolutely me. I must be there. So
yeah,
I called the woman and had a consultation, and on the mat of this 3-hour holotropic breathwork session. This
mm,
is, for those of you who don't know, breathwork has become much more, popular
yes,
as of late.
yeah,
But it alters your state of consciousness to be
mm,
able to experience a perspective of life that may be not typically accessible in
mm,
just our walking around, waking life.
yeah,
And during that experience, I heard this line that I'll never forget. It still gives me the chills, and it changed me. And it said, "Forgive everyone in advance. They're already sorry."
oh,
And I'm sitting here with this grief of a dear one in my life who has been taken by someone, and we didn't know who did this. So forgiveness is alive, and the opportunity is very present. And it reoriented something in me to where I just knew it to be so true that I didn't even have to think about the
yes,
concept of forgiveness. I just something like
yeah,
reorganized. And it had me moving in the world in a new way. I didn't have to go to years of therapy. I didn't have to try to forgive. I didn't have to. It just another a layer or level of truth or awareness landed, and it just felt, of course,
yeah.
this is
It
true.
was an alignment, a calibration of sorts, like a tuning fork.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yep. And not a bypass, right? Because sometimes people,
mm,
and I have other experiences in life where I've tried to forgive, or I wanted to forgive, or I felt like I should be forgiving, but I couldn't
yes,
find it. I was like locked in fear
yeah,
and judgment and like not forgiveness.
yes,
And I remember going back to my therapy practice, and within the course of a few weeks, I had 2 to 3 clients say to me, and I didn't, mind you, I didn't share this awareness or healing with anyone, like in my,
Oh,
certainly not my clients. This is just me living my new experience. And
yeah.
I had, I think it was 3 clients. They are so observant and attuned, and I just adore. That's the beauty of trauma, is it has you very astute
Mm.
to
Yes.
life around you, very aware.
Yes.
And they asked me, or they said to me, "You don't hate the person that hurt me anymore."
Oh,
Something to that sentiment. And I was taken aback because I'm like, I never said that. How do they know? And did I
yeah.
hate them before? And did I say that? And I was a little
Yeah.
confused, but I realized this was an energetic exchange. This was a
Yes.
something that was being transmitted, right? Like when I
Yeah.
didn't have this place of knowing of the forgiveness truth in my body, I was transmitting this, this a level of hatred to some degree, a level of
Yes.
judgment,
Yes.
contempt, perhaps,
Yes.
even though I wasn't saying it, it was in the space.
Yes.
I like dissolved that, and now something new is being transmitted in the space. And
Yes.
I said, you're right. Um, what is that like for you to be with
Yes.
me in this way? And they, most of them said something to the effect of, it's both, um, I'm kind of mad because I feel like you're not on my side anymore. I
Yeah.
want you to hate them with me.
Yes.
And also, it's incredibly liberating because for the parts of me that want to get there and that also have love for these people, they're often family members who had
Yes.
acted in ways that were traumatizing. And so we started sitting with this, and my work just exploded and transformed. Like
Yeah.
when I wasn't holding that anymore, it like freed them up to do the healing that was theirs to do.
Yes.
Some of them chose to forgive, and that was their path, and some didn't.
Yeah.
But it was free from my influence, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm holding neutrality in a
Yes.
very true and deep
Yes.
way. And
Yes.
then this just began to inform how I moved in the world, how I was able to do such deep trauma work
Yeah.
without being burnt out,
Yes.
without like a spiritual perspective and knowing
Yeah.
that helped me sit in the dark,
Yeah.
without it costing my mind, body, and spirit
Yes.
too
Yes.
much.
And it's because one of the things that I see in my evolving journey is that I have moved from the either or to the both and. So the ability, so where it used to be like the opposition or between like fear and love or hate and love, um, love now encompasses actually all of it. And again, like you said, not in a bypassing way, not in a, oh, this does not exist, but in a it exists, and like it exists within the space, and we can move past it, through it, with it, with yeah. So yeah, that's beautiful. And I know, I don't even know if you still have those, the shadow cards. Like I know that you have the oracle cards, that the shadow ones, and that makes so much sense, because then that there is so, we've talked about this before, but there's so much power in those dark times or lower. But I have a whole thing about that. We may
Yeah.
go into that later on. So did you begin at that time to seek out, like, because that must, it sounds like it's changed the trajectory of your career, your life, a lot of things. Did you at that time pick up different modalities or teachings? Were there things that you were seeking out, or like did they arrive? Tell me more, or tell us more.
Very much. That was my transition from the mind being my sole companion as a therapist, a guide, a helper, a healer,
Yeah.
which, in traditional training, so much of it is cognitive. So much of it is what
Yes.
we think about things, and that is an element of our human experience.
Yes.
But I was leaving out, I didn't have a conscious awareness or connection to the energetic principles, the
Mm,
spiritual principles, the way
mm,
the body played into this. So
mm.
after this happened, I just naturally, looking back, moved toward seeking those types of resources. I got attuned to Reiki energy.
Yeah.
I began studying energy psychology, hypnosis, more like EFT tapping, things
Yeah.
that were beyond the mind
Yes.
that
Yes.
I felt needed to be in the space,
Yeah.
which they were like already operating, but now I had a relationship with them and could
Yes.
use them in
Yes.
service of the client's healing.
Yes. Yeah. One thing I want to highlight that there for everyone who's listening or watching is that the tools might already be in your space. However, there can be a certain switch point where you, because like for me personally, I knew about energy work. I knew everything is energy. I knew intellectually on a logical, like you say, cognitive level, I knew that everything is energy. I'd heard those, but it wasn't until I had a physical experience of energy moving and seeing the outcomes of that where I was like, what? So I just want to highlight that it's not necessarily about seeking out a whole bunch of new stuff, but rather looking at what you already have present in your life or the tools that you actually have access to in your life currently, for those who are watching or listening, because correct me if I'm wrong, but that's also part of what I heard you say is that you already had those things. Now you just had a different access to them.
Exactly. And the admission that they existed and I could use them. And even as I was going through these different trainings,
Yeah.
to me, a training is an opportunity to remember who
Yes.
we are, what we know.
Yes.
We birth onto this planet and we have this veil over
Yes.
our awareness that we can work toward dissolving so that we can be a human, but remember our spiritual nature and the gifts
Yes.
and power that we can bring here and we can use.
Yes.
So I think of all of the things like the technology. I'm looking at this quartz crystal behind my computer
Yes.
here, or, things like crystals or smudging or, any of these things, they're physical representations of an energy
Yeah.
that is moving. And our human self needs tangible things
Yes.
sometimes to
Yeah.
be able to help the
Yeah.
remembering.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, what happened since you, because again, and this might be my judgment based on the US system in terms of, I know that there's certain regulations and rules in terms of like therapists and all this. And I know that there's limits, and I understand that there has to be some sort of container and
Sure.
protection for people and so forth. What happened? When did the spiritual side, I suppose, expand to the part where this cannot be, because if I correct me if I'm wrong, you're not in the US, you're not allowed to actually apply spiritual concepts or things like that in your therapy practice, right? Like, or psychotherapy practice.
It's a gray area. There's nothing that
Okay.
says like this isn't allowed, but one of the ways that they measure something like that is if they polled or interviewed like 3 to 5 people with the same degree, would it
Mm,
be standard practice
mm,
for
okay.
tarot cards to be used, for energy work to be
Yeah.
administered? So that's one of the things. And, no, we don't learn about those aspects in school. I think now there's more growth, in
Yes.
that direction.
Yeah.
But yes, it became the thing for me that I started to be called to use and do was touch, using my hands and
Mm,
body work.
yeah.
And that is, you're not really supposed to do that.
No.
Unless you're a licensed massage therapist, which at
Yeah.
one point I was considering going
Yeah.
to school to be a massage therapist so that I could do that. But I'm like, I don't want to be a massage therapist. That's not who I am. So for me, I had to really feel into like my risk tolerance. Like what was I willing to push the edge of in
Yeah.
service to my clients' healing and growth. And really sovereignty started coming online for me. I
Yes.
stopped looking at my clients as
Yeah.
victims who
Yeah.
who couldn't make decisions for themselves, or who weren't able to discuss with me and negotiate as two grown people. I mean, the majority of people I was working with were adults, right?
Mm.
And
Mm.
for one time in my career, I was a victim advocate. And then I think that's an important element of work. And I do believe we are victimized at times. However, for healing to happen, we need to transmute that experience of
Yes.
victimization and take
Yes.
our power back, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And some of the traditional therapeutic model really doesn't support that.
No.
And that's energetic. I don't think any
Yes.
therapist will tell you we don't support people taking their power back. However, the fears and the way that we coddle and baby and certain things energetically, it does
Yeah.
affect someone's capacity to really
Yes.
become themselves and
Yes.
fly the nest.
Yes.
So I began, I was working undercover for a long time. I didn't put on my website that I was doing intuitive psychotherapy. I didn't. And I
No.
remember one day, my clients were really benefiting from this experience of me trusting something beyond my
Yeah.
conscious mind, like
Yeah.
messages I was getting.
Yeah.
And it was helping them.
Yeah.
And they also wanted to know how to do that in their own life. How do I trust my gut? How do I? So I put on this workshop about intuitive development, and I thought it was like a coming out party. I thought I was like announcing myself. And I have like, I don't know, 20 or 30 people, and we're at this yoga studio all sitting in a circle. And I'm like, okay, I'm about to tell you guys something really new and, whatever. And they're all looking at me like I have three heads. They're just like, and they're looking at each other because a lot of them knew each other from retreats and events and workshops I had hosted. And they're like, what is she talking? And I said, why do you guys have that look on your face? I said, you look so confused. And they're like, well, we are. That's why we see you, right? This isn't a secret. And I was like, it's not. They're like, no. So that was really eye-opening for me. It's like,
Yeah.
it's not a secret, first of all. It's just the authentic truth of who I be.
Yeah.
It's working. It's in
Yeah.
service to their healing. I'm getting that reflection. And
Yeah.
at what point do somebody has to participate in the expansion or take a risk for a system to change?
Yes.
And I didn't take insurance, which gave me a lot of flexibility because I didn't have a third party
Yeah.
managing what
Yeah.
I was allowed to do. Say,
Gotcha.
I was
Yeah.
negotiating direct with my clients.
Yeah.
But that is a big part of why I retired my license,
Yeah.
because I got so edgy in how I was practicing
Yeah.
that the things I had agreed to with my licensure, even as far as like taking notes about clients, that started to feel so untrue.
Yeah.
I was, if
Yeah.
you would like to track what's happening, bring a journal.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I don't love the idea of me like
No.
secretly writing something about you,
Yeah.
right? And that became very there was this ethical
Yeah.
integrity rub
Yeah.
that I had to confront.
And even there, it sounds like, again, like you mentioned sovereignty, but you were also claiming your own sovereignty because part of being sovereign entails integrity and authenticity, and that is owning who I am in truth. And so, in order for me to own who I am in truth, it has to. Yeah. But I get the whole coming out because I don't think I ever really had because from the time I started, like a spiritual business coach was always on my mind. I had a fear in the beginning of being it, but it, yeah. But I get the whole. It is sort of like I saw this. When was this? I was at a symposium a couple of weeks ago, and they had done the survey where it said that in terms of like people would rather talk about sex than they will talk about faith. Like it's behind, like money is the thing that people will least talk about, and then and then the next thing is like faith or religion. They like which yeah, they would rather talk about their sex lives and their bodies and stuff rather than this. And so I get the whole sense of um I don't know if it's claiming your sovereignty or stepping into it, unveiling yourself. And so I get the spiritual coming out because it can seem like again. I also remember, and I had an experience not too long ago where, like the local. I know I'm going off on a tangent, but like the local chamber of commerce, they have this they have a page where local consultants offer 2 hours of free service. And I thought, you know what, this is a great way for me to give back to my community. Not thinking, yes, it would also be like marketing, but that wasn't even on my mind. It was like, I'm settled here. I can give back to my community. And it was so funny to talk to the person responsible for it, but because he clearly been on my website and had not gotten a clue about what I do. And so he was unable to just say, hey, we don't think you fit the profile. He was just like, well, yeah. And when I talked to him about, you know, business development, product development, automation, streamlining, and all these things, he was like, oh, okay. And I thought it would be great to have a different profile on their page because the contrast, of course, I'm not going to be for everyone. I totally honor that. But I thought the contrast would be great because then people can be like, oh, yes, and absolutely no. So sorry for going off on yeah. So it's more like, so I'm hoping with what you're sharing that we're also inspiring people to, yeah, take a step, like allow yourself to step into your sovereignty in terms of how you perceive your spirituality. Go ahead. Sorry, I'm going. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
no, along those lines, I'm so glad you brought that up because to me, it's also the way that we box or compartmentalize these things as separate, right? To
Yes.
think that
Yes.
business can't include spirituality or
Yes.
that spirituality can't include business or that people that include spirituality must not know a lot about business or vice versa. It's
Yeah.
ridiculous, right? And also
Yes.
immature. I think we're also being
Yes.
invited into a more mature and nuanced
Yes.
perspective of
Yes.
truth and reality.
Yes.
And we've been trained out of that. And I know, we share a sentiment about the divine feminine activating, right?
Yes.
And in a lot of ways, these gifts
Yes.
that we're talking about integrating into business
Yes.
are the gifts of the feminine, right?
Yes.
The
Yes.
intuition, the gentleness, the trusting, the
Yes.
opening, the receptivity, the
Yes.
knowing. And
Yes.
because for so long that's been thought of as leave that at home, what
Yes.
place does that have for business? We're
Yes.
seeing that and we're getting to clean it up and
Yes.
show that both can be true. I think you and
Yes.
I also we're very grounded in our spirituality.
Yes.
So a lot of people have the more airy fairy
Yes.
orientation and
Yes.
they have a hard time grounding spiritual
Yes.
concept on earth, which
Yes.
is fine. That's their path.
Yes.
However, if you're going to do business work, there are some very practical aspects and they require grounding. Uh,
Yes.
that's
Yes.
why I love finding out. I don't know what, I don't hold a lot of astrological knowledge very clearly, but I have been told that my chart shows that I'm here to ground spiritual principles
Oh,
in a very practical way. And I'm
brilliant.
like, I think I'm doing it.
Yes, and that makes total sense. And I want to say, like, in terms of for me, and yes, I get the whole the feminine part, and I think that we want to share that when we talk about feminine, we're not talking about genders. We're talking about
Right.
two
Energy.
energies because we do live in a world of polarity. However, what I've found throughout my journey is also the more I incorporate my, divine feminine and my divine masculine, because that's the thing. When she rises, he has to rise. And I know I'm using gender terms, but that has to rise as well. The container, the that as well. However, I'm also finding that more and more I am moving into again the both and the holding of the wholeness, the oneness where
Unity consciousness, right? As
yes,
yeah,
yes, yeah. Okay,
very
so
much.
sorry. So when you how did you make, and sorry, one more thing that's coming. I once had a therapist who told me, like, when we were doing energy work, they told me, like, they saw themselves as being a therapist, like a client coming to their office, opening their suitcase, taking out all the clothes, and then when the session was over, putting it back in the suitcase and bringing it with them. Whereas with the energy work, we were taking it out of the suitcase, cleaning it off, and sending it out into, like, it's sort of like just giving it all to Goodwill. And so the suitcase would become lighter and lighter and lighter and lighter. And that's been my experience with energy work as well. It's been I am getting lighter and lighter and lighter and lighter in body, mind, and spirit. Like I am getting lighter. When you made that transition, what were your thoughts? And like, because you mentioned the coming out party, which was really like coming out of what? Like you're already out. Um, but how was that like it's even like just mundane. How was it like like deciding, okay, I'm gonna abandon my license. How was that for you, like because as professionally, because like we're talking about your entire business here, like literally lighting a match on fire and then,
So the process took a while, and I didn't come to it easily. I was resistant to it for a long
yeah,
time, so much so that it was my body that, because I wasn't hearing and listening to the
yes,
next right step, my
mm,
body began to show me that through incredible pain, symptoms, and sensations. I literally couldn't get up off the floor for like 2 or 3 months, incredible back pain, heart palpitations, nausea. Nothing could be diagnosed from traditional Western medicine. They couldn't find a thing. They're like, we don't know. And so my spiritual teachers were saying, I said, I feel like I'm dying. They're like, you are, but it's an
yeah,
ego death. You're dying to your identity, to who you've been,
yeah,
to what has been, and you need to be listening for what is to be. And you need to answer that call. Otherwise, your body is going to continue to have to hold this truth without acknowledgement, and it's going to
yeah,
be painful. So
yeah,
that's when I started getting the inkling of, oh, if I wasn't afraid, like, what would I be doing? And
mm,
I heard, I would be moving to California from Florida full
wow,
time. At that point, I had been going back and forth for 3 years, like several months at a time in each place.
yeah,
And I wasn't licensed in California. So, and it would have been very rigorous to become licensed.
gotcha,
And I was already supervising other, yep. It's just like,
yeah,
am I going to close the business? Am I going to shut down everything that I know?
yeah,
And one of my favorite questions that I often talk to clients about is, if you knew that everything would be okay, if you knew that you would be safe, provided for, loved, protected, like, what is the truth of the next move? And so I positioned that, asked myself, brought that back to me, and I heard I would close up shop and I would listen for what's next, and I would make this move. And I actually went to a healing event, kind of an energy healing event over a weekend. And it was there that they reorganized my energy system to help me find like the courage, the align my energy so that I
yeah,
could make this decision. And
yeah,
within 2 months of that event, I had made the decision and the transition.
yeah,
And at that point too, I did have a portion of my business. I would say it was about 20% of my business was mentoring healers.
yeah,
So it was like 80-20. And so then I had to swap that and
yeah.
yeah.
And the thing about like I always harp on about this is that what we externally perceive as courage is usually internally experienced as fear.
Yes.
Because and I say that because it's so easy to look at someone and be like, oh my God, that's so courageous and that's so brave and yada yada. But meanwhile, that person is just like, at least from my perspective, whenever people have told me this, I'm like, are you like, I am internally screaming, I'm scared
Yeah.
as fudge like about
Yep.
this, but I'm still choosing love. I'm still choosing to do it. And so I just want to share that for anyone who's listening in terms of know that fear is can be with you throughout. It doesn't,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's
And
such an important point. I don't like to, we see people's highlight reels of like, oh, she
yes,
closed her successful practice and now she moved and she's
yeah,
even more successful or more abundant, and it looks
yeah,
like all fun and games. And yes, there are aspects of truth in that, but it isn't the whole truth, right?
yes,
Nobody was behind the scenes with me, while I was on the floor thinking I was dying,
yeah,
deciding whether I was going to give in to this thing. And so, yes, it
yeah,
was courageous, and I was terrified while it was all going down.
yes.
And
So
now I'm
that's
grateful. that I.
Yes, yeah, and the both and that's the other thing, because usually on the other side of courage is like the most ecstatic, orgasmic satisfaction that there can be.
So
It's
much so.
it's I suppose part of, I don't know whether it's the release, it's just there's just like this satisfaction. And for me personally, that has I've learned has had nothing to do, because I've had some very interesting years for the past four-ish years. Um, it has had nothing to do with my external circumstances and my perceived quote unquote abundance or financial situation. I've actually come to a place where that is a stable, like the satisfaction is a stable in my life no matter what, which is wild for me, and also wild to think back of who I was 14, 15 years ago, scared out of my mind, quitting my job and just going for this thing,
Yeah.
right? So yeah.
Leaps of faith. We don't know what's going to happen. We're just trusting. Like we get to a point where we know that we just have to follow the yellow brick road, so to speak. We have to
Yeah,
move toward the
yeah,
things that are calling us and
yes,
trust. And as we do that enough, it doesn't take the fear away, but we have evidence built that when I do this,
yes,
there's usually a positive and fulfilling
yes,
outcome for me and for other, because I get to serve at a true
yes.
and often expanded level.
Yes, yes, and we can hold space for more, right? We can like the more I expand my capacity, the more I'm able to hold space for others as well. Yeah, which is also very satisfying. I know I keep talking about satisfaction, but yeah.
Yes.
So when you and thank you for sharing that so honestly, because again, like you said, it's about um that to me is where the inspiration lies, is that and that's why I want to have these conversations, is because I want to show people, A, there's no right way to do spirituality, like you're on your own journey, and also to show that I suppose we all go through the fire, like we all go. There's a one of my favorite quotes is from Viktor Frankl, who says, "What is to give light must endure burning."
Mm.
And yeah, not to say that you have to have, but it's usually part of the experience, the human experience, because we're so, at least for me, I'm stubborn and headstrong, and it's like, no, no, no. And the learning, the trusting, and the surrendering, and also the surrendering, even though I now have all these experiences accumulated, there's still a level of surrender where it's into the unknown. Like I
Yes.
don't know. I really don't know if it will work. And I'm still choosing to surrender because anything else would, yeah. So I remember because I know that you've included aerial somatics, and I'm curious about that transition into when did that come into your life, into your practice, into your work?
So personally, it came into my life in 2018. I met a practitioner and began doing this aerial somatic work as a client,
Yeah.
and just feeling such tremendous value and benefit of this womb-like. Um, should I take the swing down? It's behind me. People
Go
might
ahead.
be like, "What the heck is? What are we talking about here?"
Take the swing down. Show it to us.
Can
It
you
should,
see?
yeah, yeah, beautiful. So for those who are listening, I will share, like we'll have Keri do like a photo or something, but
Yes.
yeah, so she has a beautiful cloth
Yeah, it's a
swing that
silk
you can,
fabric,
yeah.
uh,
Oh, okay.
like a silk hammock.
Yeah, go ahead.
And so you lay in it kind of like a hammock, and it creates this womb-like experience. And you're being held by this fabric, suspended, weightless, right?
Mm,
And then you're also being held by a practitioner who is pulling and pushing the fabric, relating to your body in different positions. And it's unlike anything else I've ever, the closest to it might be like you're in water, like
Yeah.
Watts massage or being held in
Yeah.
water, similar to this, but still different. And when it was during the pandemic, I was living alone, wasn't experiencing a lot of touch, and was noticing my nervous system having a really challenging time
Yeah.
regulating. I wasn't co-regulating in community for a period of time.
Yeah.
And that's when I got a swing at my house and started doing a personal practice with the somatic swing and using it to rock and hold. And then my mentor and practitioner began to train practitioners. And so
Mm.
I got trained in 2022 or 23
Yeah.
and have begun implementing it with
Yeah.
healers. And it's just been such a gift.
Yeah. I can imagine, because that's one of the things. So that, we talked earlier, you mentioned the whole quote unquote airy fairy, and I know you do too. We love the airy fairy. We love like the unicorns and the butterflies and all that, and we also love the groundedness and the getting it done, and like what's the next step, and let's get action to it, and like, because we want to ground it in, right? Because at least I can speak for myself, if it's all in up here and in the mind, like there's no next step. However, when it comes to spirituality, very often it is all about like taking off and saying, see ya, suckers. Like, we think that ascension is why we're here, until we realize, oh, we've actually come to do the work, right? At least that was the way it was for me. And what I've noticed is, and especially with some of the plant medicines, that people have a tendency, I am very cautious, and I'm very, I don't know. I always share, like, I I believe in the power of plant medicine fully. However, you have to make sure it's with a practitioner who absolutely know what they're doing. You have to make sure that that you're fully grounded into the physical realm before you do that, and B, that they can bring you fully back into your physical body. Because if not, you can risk like literally losing your mind, like, and not just, and that's not just to do with plant medicine work, but also with like chakra work. People always focus on the third and the fourth, like, sorry, the third chakra and above. They want to go out, but rarely do we want to go in and deep. And at least now in my experience, we cannot have the full spiritual experience if we're not fully grounded into the physical vessel that we've chosen in this lifetime. And so to me, like what you're sharing also is, with all of your knowledge about the nervous system and somatic, like, to integrate, it must be a different level of integration.
Very much. And what I love about it is it's simultaneously doing the healing, the reorganizing, and integrating. Whereas with a talk therapy, for example, or something that involves the conscious mind,
Yeah.
when you finish that session, then you have to go forth and embody it and integrate it. It's like a second step. This is like combining all of the steps in one. And that integration and embodiment part are crucial. I'm really in the camp of what you just discussed, that every resource has a time and a place with proper administration and follow up and all of that. However, I think, we're so eager to escape the pain and experience of humaning that we sometimes choose things that contribute to that pain, as opposed to when you feel it, you can heal it and move along. So
you gotta feel it to heal it. Like, that's like there's no way out, like there's no way out. If the only way is
shortcut.
Like well, and I what I like to add as a disclaimer is that there maybe I'm just not evolved enough or spiritual enough or whatever enough to have been able to do that. Maybe there are people who can, and that goes back to actually what I was going to harp on about in the beginning in terms of high vibe. I recently saw this post where it said that one of the problems with frequency of emotions, like, is because it was like low vibration and high vibration. And then they were talking about how now it's like more holistic, and they were showing emotions and feelings in a circle.
And if you look at the studies about frequencies of emotions and feelings, some emotions have quote unquote lower frequencies and others have higher frequencies. That's not an issue. The issue is when the teaching becomes we want to be in the high vibrations all the time, which is well, again, maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm just not spiritual enough. Maybe I'm just not evolved enough. And I sort of see it as like if you were like if you look at a radio, like an FM radio, like there's channels on the lower vibrations and there's channels on the higher vibrations. And we don't say, oh, the lower vibration radios are just bad, and we only want to go with the higher vibration radios. We want like we don't do that. So it's not so much it's not that feelings have different frequencies frequencies. It's that how are we teaching it? And go ahead.
Very much. I mean, my challenge with that teaching is always that it has us avoiding the very thing that helps us to experience more range of our human experience, right? So the deeper we go into the experiences of shame, which is said to be among the lowest vibration,
Yes.
and if we take judgment out of that, it just is. It's like, up and down, left and right, they're not good or bad. They're just, if you make a right turn, though, when you're supposed to make a left, you're going to take the scenic route. So there are more efficient routes. And I think if you let yourself feel what's true, then you more naturally go to the other vibration. And one of my teachers talks about, oh, you could just vibrate and, vibrate above all of these things that are happening. And she was like, if you were vibrating that high to be able to avoid the energy of these things that we're experiencing, you would vibrate off the planet. Like the teaching has been bastardized. It's not accurate, right? It's, there's a range of experience. And I say also become a supervisor of, become a witness to the feelings, right? If you know you're scared, you don't want to live in fear and take up residence there full time, but you also don't want to avoid its presence because it's just as true as the joy. And and if you can't skip steps. It doesn't work.
I thought you were
I know. I'm like, please tell me if we can do that. But when I energetically test that,
I can't tell you how many times I've said that exact same thing about like we would vibrate off, not in those terms, but it's like we become, and that's what I meant in terms. I mean, at least that's what I've realized in terms of quote unquote ascension, or in terms of lightness, because the more gunk and shit I work through, the lighter I become, body, mind, and spirit. And I recognize, like, if we look at the quote unquote master teachers who became quote, because enlightenment, let's on it, means to bring, like, to ground in light, to bring in light, to bring in light. And so the more you do that, the lighter you become, to the point where maybe it's gonna happen this lifetime. I don't think so. But I can see that the quote unquote the masters that we talk about become so enlightened, and that they lose their physical form because the physical can no longer contain that vibration. Makes total sense on an energetic level. And I'm still human. So
me too.
Yeah. And also the thing is, now I've come to the place in my work where I don't want to take off, because I like through this vessel, I am able to share what I'm able to share. I'm able to, like you said, experience the range, like the shame, the guilt, the fear, the elation, the joy, the orgasm, like the ecstatic joy. Like I am able to experience that. And there's an ecstasy in both, also in the grief and yeah. Okay. Wow.
All the places we can go.
And I know, and again, I want to highlight. Do you still sell the oracle cards, like the shadow? Okay, because that's one of the things I want to highlight is that Keri has a powerful portal to the experience of those through her oracle cards, the shadow cards.
Messages from shadow. I actually got the. It's so funny. I took them out of my drawer and I grabbed them. So we can give everybody a little peek if they want to see.
Yay! Yes.
Yeah, messages from Shadow. This was my baby that was birthed when I decided to make that move and transition.
Yeah.
It was like when I answered the call, it
Yeah.
was like, okay, this
Yeah.
is
And I'll
yeah.
leave like in the description, there will be a link to my site where you like I'll make sure to leave links to where you can buy these cards from Keri and I because it is a great way to start working with the quote unquote lower vibrations or the things that quote unquote that we're not supposed to but that we absolutely do. So where are you at where are you at now in your with your spirituality? Yeah, where are you at now?
It's a great question. I feel like there's just a deepening and an expanding of I feel like what I touched in that experience that I named, that breath work and that awareness, it was just a thread that got
Yeah,
pulled, and I feel like I'm following that thread. And as I mature in what that means and how I see life and all the opportunities, right? It's like that sounds fine in theory, forgive everybody in advance, they're already sorry. That
yeah,
sounds good and it's lovely concept. However, when life is happening and there are things that are, painful or hard to forgive. So right
yeah,
now I'm challenging myself, where are the places where that wants to be implemented and embodied
yeah,
that I'm struggling with,
yeah,
and yeah, and I think also just letting my spirituality live in every aspect of my life, that it's not compartmentalized, like I'm spiritual behind the scenes, but I'm this version of me when I work or teach or talk. It's this is me, to me,
yes,
spirituality is how we're relating to life, all elements of life,
yeah,
and
yes,
being more out in the open.
yeah.
It's just more integrated.
Yeah. And more holistic. So for me, like my core principle is love is the way. And like for me and like in that I suppose holistic principle, um there is like I call it like it's like a win-win-win because when I am in that space, the solutions and ideas and downloads that happen are not just for me or for my clients, but also for my clients' clients. And it's a ripple effect. It ripples out. Um, of course, Miracles has this quote that I absolutely love that says, like, a miracle is never lost. It may touch people that
Mhm.
you've never even met or dreamed or I share this. I once had this on my newsletter. I'd told people that they could ask me something and I would intuitively give them an answer. And I did.
Mhm.
There's this person, and I'm sharing this because she gave me permission to share. I shared that with her and didn't hear from her or didn't think anything of it. And I think it was more than a year or almost 18 months later, I got a message back from her that she replied to that email saying, "Hey, I just wanted to let you know that this has been sitting in my inbox for the past more than a year and has served every day as a reminder of why I do what I do. And now this has been brought to life and everything you shared and blah, blah, blah." And she was, quote unquote, never been a client of mine. I didn't work with her. And I had no idea that that was, and I'm sharing that because there's people in your life, there's people in those of you who are listening or watching lives that never will share with you the impact that you have on them and the smiles that you bring to their heart, the love that they have for you, the gratitude, the joy. But just know that that is multiplied and rippled out through you.
Yes.
Yeah. Um,
That reminds me to tell people when they touch you. Like oftentimes I'll have,
yeah.
a healer send out an email that was really vulnerable to share, or they make an offer for an event or a
Yeah.
service that they have, and there's crickets, and then they're like, did anybody hear that or care? Or does
Yeah.
my work
Yeah.
matter?
Yeah.
And I said, when is the last time you were touched by an email or an Instagram, story or meme or post? Did you tell them? And
Yeah.
so I think this is very timely with the move into the age of Aquarius. It's
Yes.
our relationship to self and other, so we can be together without abandoning self. And I
Yeah.
think that's part of it. What is our influence? What is our impact? And what is our participation in letting other people experience how
Yeah.
we're experiencing them? And I
Yeah.
think then that begins to get reflected and create a new way that we relate and like
Yeah.
upgrades our culture.
Yeah.
Uh, Being touched and taking the moment to communicate that we were touched.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's so funny whenever people mention the age of Aquarius because we're moving out of Aries, I believe, or like moving out
The
of
Piscean
Pisces
age.
and Aries preceded Pisces. So I'm an Aries sun and I'm actually an Aquarius moon. So I like a whole like that's like yeah, I never really understood my Aquarius. Like now I get it. I'm starting to learn more about my Aquarius moon. I'm like, oh, that makes a lot of sense in my life. So there's something professionally. So professionally in your work today, how do you incorporate spirit? Like it sounds, I know that it sounds like you embody it more than incorporate it, but I'm wondering how did you incorporate it into, or if even that was a conscious practice, or like do you have daily rituals in terms of your business or work and like tell, am I making sense in terms of question? Are you,
Yes,
you're
it's all of
receiving,
it.
you're receiving?
I'm picking it up. Yes. So it's all of that. Yes, I do have rituals. I have like a grid that I hold for my business as like a template of the energetics
Yeah,
of how I want to be of service, listening for how the divine would have me be of service,
yes,
that my work could ripple out and touch those that it's meant to. I
yeah,
think for me, it's really a practice of surrender, of realizing it's not really what my ego wants to do or how my ego wants to serve, because sometimes what I want to do and what God needs me to do are two very different things.
yeah,
And that's been a maturation for me of like, what is mine to do? So that's a prayer that I'm in meditation with quite often.
yeah,
And then in terms of with clients, it is both. It's a transmission. Like sometimes the sessions or the teachings might sound very practical or like we're talking about business, but there's always a running through that of the way that I answer any question, the way that I hear, what they're saying or not
yes,
saying is
yeah,
always taken into account. And really, my hope is to let people be able to awaken to and remember that it's so much more than the way that we've been like programmed
mm,
and like patterned to see the world.
yeah,
That the way that things are happening, um yeah, there's more to it. Like look.
yes, yes. The word that also comes up for me is discernment, and I'm pretty sure that like I don't know that you would agree. I think that you would agree with me in terms of because in terms of that's the sovereignty and like having discernment and listening within rather than like that's one of the things that I always tell my clients like this is what I share, this is what I see. You have to like always honor what's within you. So, for example, if I have a client who's completing their cycle or their package with me, I always tell them, listen, I'd love to continue working with you if that's the like if that's the case. If I find that they would be better served somewhere else, I will absolutely guide them towards that or share that with them. However, I never want to be like it, I never want it to be like an attachment. It's always because there's so much of that in the world where it's like just holding on like and I would rather set people free. Like it's like sort of like if then they'll come back if and when it serves them, right? So that's am I making sense? Yeah.
Completely. And I think that's why, I mean, what I love is intimacy and long-term
Yes.
connecting, relating.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so I go through, I call them seasons. There's seasons where I'm in there deep with someone,
Yeah.
we're communicating, we've got lots of sessions, they're in every one of my circles, they're coming to all of my events. And then it's like, there's a completion and we both feel it and we honor it. And just because you've been investing and working with
Yes.
me, we'd love
Yes.
to be together and it's been
Yeah.
working, it doesn't mean it's true. So I am paying attention to it feels like you're in a moment of like integrate, like
Yeah.
implement this, be
Yes.
with yourself.
Yes.
and then circle back. And people
Yeah.
tend to do that. Like, hey, I'm
Yes.
at my next level. Like, Keri, like, we need another round. And it's like,
Yes.
great, come on in.
Exactly.
You're welcome back. It's not, we're
Yes.
not hostages, and I feel sad when I hear, a lot of people, thank you for taking this so well. My other, coaches haven't, that I felt pressured, and I'm like, oh gosh, that just hurts my
Like
heart
a
because,
credit card, right? Yeah.
yeah. And it's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
we do live with money. It is our current currency,
Yes.
and we do exchange that. So yes, I'm delighted to be paid for the work that I'm doing.
100%.
And, that's a side effect of doing the
Yeah.
work that I'm here to do anyway.
Yeah. I mean, I love money. I've had this, I have very interesting, eventually I'll do an episode on this, like in terms of money, because it's been such a interesting journey for me. Because one of my pivotal moments was, what was this, 12, 14, 16 years ago. I had come off of like out of my corporate career. I was making a very healthy amount of money. I was traveling, clothes, vacationing, apartment, everything. And then fast forward a year later, and I was living off welfare, and I was like, it was like a quarter of what I'd been used to the year before. And I had this epiphany where I realized my fear of money, my fear, a concern about money was exactly the same, even though I was making a year prior, I'd been making 4 times as much as I was.
Yeah.
And
Not about the money.
that was like it was like, oh, it's not about the money. It's about like, yeah. So I've come to a place where like, and I like to say this often, I love money because apparently we're not allowed to say that. And we're not allowed to love money. I'm like, but I do love money. I love money for what it brings me, for what opportunity it provides, for the housing, for the ability to pay for things, for what, like the books that I can buy, for the people that I can support, the causes that I believe in, like. And I also just love, as you can tell, glitter. Like I like glittery things, right? So, yeah. So no, I love money, and I think everyone should. Yeah. Well, that's a whole other thing. I can see that we have flown through time. Keri, one question I do want to ask, because this is when I've started. Sometimes I keep forgetting, so I want to make sure that I ask you this. What is mastery to you?
Oh,
No,
good question. Let me feel that.
no pressure.
To me, mastery is the practice and journey of doing the work. It's of showing up
Yeah.
and listening, participating, and being devoted to
Mm.
something that is asking,
Yeah.
to be worked on, right? I think we've lost our way in terms of what that is. Like mastery requires like a
Yeah.
traditional education, or some people think that they have mastery because they took a weekend course, but they haven't done the work. So
Yes.
I think our relationship to mastery
Yeah.
is being cleaned up, like
Yes.
the opportunity to really come
Yes.
into right relationship with giving the time, the attention, the care, the energy,
Mm.
the devotion to
Mm.
a journey of embodying a
Mm.
particular skill,
Mm.
being in right relationship with
Mm.
a skill that is
Yeah.
yours to cultivate.
Yes. Oh, that was a good one. Because for me, mastery, the whole like when I was starting this new edition of my work, because it's been in different editions, and
Yeah.
mastery was a word like I was like, ooh, I was scared to use. Like there was like rules about ooh, and I realized that part of the reason why mastery was showing up for me was because I had to own my own mastery. I wasn't owning how good I am or how excelling I was in a particular area.
Yeah.
And at that same time, again, going back to the both and going back to, and also while I am owning that, I am also owning that this is just part of the journey. It's not like it's not an endpoint. Mastery is not for me, it's not an endpoint. It is a
calibration, a vibration that is continuously expanding me. It's not even because it's not a pursuit, it's not a chase, it's an evolving journey that I am surrendering into. Yeah. But I love what you said in terms of a weekend course and then thinking, ta-da! Like I thought that when I chose love for the first time back in 2008, I thought, oh well, I've chosen love, and now like everything is just gonna.
I arrived.
Yes, I have arrived.
Rude awakening, right?
Hallelujah, hallelujah. And then I got bitch slapped by the universe a few times
Getting
and
started.
and then, yeah. Um, is there anything else you want to share? Anything we haven't, anything that's on your heart and your mind before we say goodbye for now?
Just thank you. Thank you for being you and the journey of mastery that you're on, and continue to follow and listen to. And yeah, thank you to everyone who is listening and taking putting this through their own filters and taking what is theirs to receive
Yes.
from our conversation. I really am in deep trust that it's no mistake who hears what they need to hear when they need to hear it. And
Exactly.
yeah.
Thank you, Keri, and to everyone listening. I will leave links and stuff to where you can find Keri and all of her brilliance in the show notes, or in the link in the show notes. So yeah, and have a wonderful day wherever in the world you might be. Lots of love. That is what I have for you in today's episode of Mastery with Maria Serafina. I hope it served you well. For all the deeds and details, click the link in the description and help me spread the love of this transmission by sharing it with a friend or on social media, or leave me a comment or review. Have a wonderful day. God bless.